Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Lucifer Season 6, Episode 8. Another great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, obviously, we're picking up with Ella being like, right, and this is why the end of the world is here. And obviously, Lucifer's like, all right, some of that makes sense, but like all of these things, like a mosquitoes, like population down, like aren't those kind of like a tidbit annoying things, but not big enough? But for Ella, she explains like, right, if all the mosquitoes go, that completely throws the ecosystem off, and then that can just lead to the end of everything. And it's like, right, so even these small things matter, because she's like, right, some of this stuff, like the missing socks thing, yeah, that's a little, but it's like, right, everything else is a sign that this could be. And even Ella's like, right, we wouldn't have to be worrying about the end of the world. I would have come to you guys sooner about this if you guys weren't lying to me the entire time about everything. All right, so Lucifer's saying like, all right, I'm going to have to ascend to become God. And she's like, whoa. What do you mean? Wait, you're going to become a God? I thought your dad was God. Like, he's the one that... It's like, well, yeah, Lucifer, he won the throne. I mean, hell, a lot of people, Remiel died for it. Chloe died. Ella's like, wait, what? It's like, there's a lot we got to explain to you. So, Lucifer's decided that he's going to take this up. It's like, right, I do need to take my ascension to the throne. Like, that's going to fix everything. But when time comes, he can't get it up because his wings won't come out. And it's like, whoa, oh, crap, this is bad. And now it's like, right, he's self-actualizing again. So if his wings aren't coming out, there's something deeper here. Aminadel being like, right, I'm going to handle this, check out the Silver City situation, because like, right, we don't have time for you to kind of be going through what you're going through right now. I'll go to the Silver City and find out. He jumps off the building. At first I was scared for a minute though, because I was like, right, we're going to find out that this isn't just a Lucifer thing, that it's all angels. So I thought he was going to fall. Granted, he was going to be okay, but then he spreads his wing and fly, and like Ella's like, oh my god, so it's, oh my god, she's like, this is what it is. And then it's like, okay, you see that smile on her face, but then like you see the solemn look on her face, because we find out later on like why she feels that way, because it's like, right, you guys have lied to me, and even Lucifer saying like, right, I've always told you who I was, but for her it's still like a no. You could at any point in time have been like, no, you think I'm an actor or whatever, it's like, no, this is real, I'm really the devil, but they never clarified that. So, obviously, for Lucifer, he goes and tracks down Linda, who banged it out with someone from the wedding, and it's like, oh, it's like, right, it's time, the end of the world and everything, right, it's time for the final therapy of Lucifer Morningstar, again. And I really liked that this episode, and it's a perfect episode to be in the final season, because it's an episode that's like, it's storyline-wise, just because of what it encapsulates, encapsulates all the, it encapsulates all of the therapy sessions, but the story as a whole and Lucifer's progression is kind of similar to that episode of Dan's last season, the second half of season 5, when Lucifer was messing with him and being like, oh, did you catch all the references? It's kind of like that, because this is almost like a reenactment episode in certain regards, because Lucifer finds out about Linda's book, because I love that, like, she pulled it out, because I guess, like, looking over her 5 years of therapy, like, it's almost kind of messed up, because it's like, right, because you're trying to rehash old therapy and use it for new circumstances that can kind of fit the same bill. She's done it so far this season, so she's trying to do it again, but Lucifer catches her, like, what's that? She's like, doesn't look like nothing to me. And it's like, wait, this is a book about me? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, thank goodness, finally, someone else is going to be out there putting my true story out there. And I was like, I figured he'd have that reaction, but I also knew, like, if he started reading the book, I was like, there's going to be certain details you're not going to like, because I figured Linda would put her, like, therapist spin on it. So I figured it'd start poking and prodding at certain things that Lucifer said over the years. And I thought, like, oh, he's like, I don't agree with that. Turns out to be a big crux of the episode is that very statement and that very element to it. But I think that's so amazing. And it's like, right, well, this is the book. And it's like, oh no, that's only the first chapter. Pulls out a whole stack. Boom. This is the book. It's not done, and she doesn't want anyone reading it, but it's like, right, we're going to have to divide and conquer. So, Dan's there, Ella's there, Chloe's there, and Linda's obviously there, and Lucifer there. It's like, right, we're going to have to divide and conquer this book. And then May shows up, and she's like, what? You interrupted a demon on a wedding night? Like, you got to, or her honeymoon or wedding night, whatever, and, like, this is what you get. And I loved, like, the divide and conquer of just, like, reading a book. And then it's just, like, it's, like, a very abridged version of certain story. Like, it's like I said, a reenactment, but almost like an abridged version of, like, an episode of Lucifer, where, Lucifer, he's helping Chloe, and Chloe's like, oh, we solved it. Okay, end up being the first person we met. It's like, oh, who would have guessed? I'm like playing into like the cop tropes and stuff like that even Lucifer plays into, and then it's just kind of like, oh, Ella being like, blah blah blah, like science gawk, blah blah blah, super cheesy, science gawk. I'm happy cheesy science gawk, and it's like, did you say science stuff? Well, I solved another case, and just like playing into that. And then Dan is like, Dan, did you mess something up with this evidence? He's like, yes. There's something missing from this. And Dan pulls out a bunch of money and puts it out. And then May shows up with 2 beaten up guys and a severed guy's head. And Dan goes, she's like, calm down. He was already like this when I found him. Then she's over there. And then like one of the other officers is underneath the desk when Maze was sitting down. So it's like some freaky. Like, it's just like, I love it. I love it so much. And it's like, I think it was a later point when it was like, okay, Ella, can you go? Yeah, it was a later one where it's like, oh, Ella, like, we need to talk about some divine stuff. Like, can you like go over there, Ella, or something like that? So first and foremost, I love that Ella was like, you're treating me like a happy-go-lucky person and stuff like that. Like, is that really how you see me? He's like, no. But then like Chloe's like, honestly, it's not too far from you. You have a very like glass half full type of personality. And she's, I think it's pretty. I mean, even May's being like, honestly, Lucifer nailed me. I mean, like sex, violence, the badass outfits. Like Maze is like super all about her depiction, and it's like I love Ella being like, yeah, of course you'd be all about it, Chloe. Like it points you out amazingly because it's like you're the best person ever. I even love later on Lucifer goes like, yeah, it does kind of point out the fact is that he's super into Chloe. That the fact is he paints her in such an amazing light. Like she's just like top tier detective. No one can do it better. Like, oh, I got the smallest thing. I figured it out. Because from his perspective, it's like right, like she's so good at what she does. Like you could tell he's super into her the way he like paints her in the story. But also to know like, right, this is Linda's concoction, stuff like that. Because also finding out like Dan is here is like, wait, he's a ghost, because Dan's like, right, this is a whole thing about like Lucifer trying to help people but then kind of abandoning them when he needs their help and stuff like that. And once again, just Ella, I love the entire time she's just hung up on like, you guys knew the entire time. I was like, oh, I can't believe you told me that. I can't believe that. I can't believe you guys didn't tell me that. There was a reference in particular she made about, I'm trying to remember what it was. I remember now, right? It's the emu feather. Well, the angel feather, but it's like, you made me believe it was an emu feather. He's like, well, it was the most rational explanation at the time. It's just stuff like that where she just felt like, for her, she brings it up later, like she thought she was part of the inner circle. And now it's like, right, all the people around her, it's like, did you guys think this was a joke? Making fun of me and he's like, once again, it's like, always told you who I really was. But the fact of the matter is, it is a thing of like, right, we shouldn't have kept it from you. But at the end of the day, you are someone that's important to us. Like you've never, like how important you two are to us, that never changed. Like Ella, like you always have been that person to us. And he hugs her. I was like, okay. I was like, well, maybe Ella's on her way to forgive you. It's like, I mean, he's like, yeah, you're BFFs with like Azrael. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Ray is the angel of death. I was like, oh boy, Lucifer. He's like, oh, Christ. Like, right, you haven't gotten to that chapter in the book yet. It's like, once again, secret bomb because she thought she was crazy. Because I mean, to be fair, Lucifer didn't find out about Azrael being the friend the ghost you were seeing until the end of the episode. But it's still a thing of he knew, he found out eventually, and he still never told you. So now it's like, and now she's stressing out about the fact that it's like, right, I'm just talking like friends with the angel of death. It's like, dude, all this, like, once again, it gets you giddy because, like, being a massive fan of this show, it's like, dropping all the references. Because I even love that, like, Maze is reading some of the book, and then, like, Dan's over her shoulder. She's like, you need me to speed up? So if you can read it all, he's like, yes, like, he doesn't like that the book paints him a certain way because she's like, yeah, he's just like, oh, yeah, like, yeah, I'm just, because he even said, like, right, the book nailed me perfectly, the whole being dirty thing. He's like, I'm dirty and I'm shitty. She's like, you're not shitty, Dan. He's like, Maze, you're literally reading the part where you and me killed a guy. It's like, oh, yeah. And I love their different reenactments of it. And just like the way Dan proceeded, he was such a bad, he's doing almost like that Batman voice. He's like, we just have to do this. And then Maze is just like, oh, he's like, this is all my fault. She's like, yes, Dan, it is all your fault. And just like, I was like, you know that's BS, because that wouldn't be Maze at all. And then like partway through it, Maze is like, let me tell you how it really was. And they play it over again, and Dan's the nervous one instead of her. And she's like, yep, it's the Russians. Got to do what we got to do. And it's like, I love Dan being like, all right, you got your version and I've got mine. So, but, because obviously she's trying to help, Dan, because it comes into the, what I thought, I had brought this up in the previous episode. I was like, right, Lucifer must have gotten to Dan before he saw his hell loop. And it turns out he did see it, but Lucifer pulled him out way before like it could really like be caught in it, like repeating it over and over again. So he doesn't really know what his hell loop really was. So Lucifer in Lucifer's case, because that was like something I was kept leaning like, yeah, because like you would know what you're super guilty about because that's what your hell loop is based around. Granted, once again, there's deeper layers to it, as we saw with Jimmy Barnes' situation. But what I thought was so fascinating is that yeah, because Lucifer inadvertently, by saving you from your hell loop, he inadvertently screwed you over from ever like figuring things out on your own and ascending to heaven. You know, so it's like, right. So she's like, you don't got to worry about it. I'm pretty much like, you know, I'm a guilt detector. Like I will torture your ass right to heaven. And so she starts throwing out like the Charlotte stuff. He's like, no, I've dealt with the Charlotte stuff. He's like, I blame myself at first, but it's like, I know I'm not responsible. Plus, it alleviates some, like, makes me feel better knowing for sure that she's in heaven, you know? And that was also another issue for Ella too. It's like, when I lost my faith for a while, and like my faith in the bit guy, and you could have literally told me that Charlotte was in a better place because she lost her faith because of Charlotte's death. It's like, things would have been different. You actually knew she was in heaven. You could have confirmed that for me, but you never did. And so, but then trying to like riddle all his other guilt, it didn't work out. So it's like, I forgot what it. There was something else that Maze tried to poke at him, and he would just kind of like move past it super easily. I don't remember. But ultimately, it's like, what about Ella? He's like, what about Ella? It's like, you feel guilt about the fact is that, yes, you could have told her about what's going on, been there for her, but now she has to like deal with it because you're not the only other person on the team that was kind of the last to know. Like, you could have been there to kind of like shoulder some of this for her. So ultimately, Dan wants her to, like, I love that Dan's like, oh, and that beaker she's looking for that she lost last week, tell her. And it's like, and it just makes me like, Dan says, yo. And it's like, he's like, come on. She's like, I summarized. I was like, come on, Maze, don't do that. But, ultimately, he shows her reading it, and she's basically referencing the end of season 4 with all the dead. It's like, oh, they look like they all died twice. It's like, oh, that's crazy because it looks like a whole cult thing. It's like, right, it's like, right, there must be something else going on there. Like, they completely, like, she's like, you're right, there's got to be a better explanation. And so she's like, right, you guys are having a laugh behind my back. It's like, just keep reading. And then she hears about Lucifer and Chloe's perspective on things of like, right, like, I wish we could tell Ella, like, because she is such an important part of the group. Like, we can always count on her. She's always like a big part of this team. It's like, yeah, but we can't tell her because we've seen how people have reacted. And that was my part. That's where I kept being like, that's probably the reason why they never told Ella, because the past reactions to it have not been positive. Linda had like the most positive. Chloe kind of went off the deep end a little bit. Dan tried to kill Lucifer. Obviously, criminals kind of literally been driven insane by the knowledge of what, well, at least seeing Lucifer's devil face sent them packing down Insane Street. So, or I guess a better way of phrasing that would be like down Insanity Avenue would be probably a better apt way of saying it. But regardless, so it's like, that's where I was kind of like, yeah, but also it's the thing of Ella believes in all of this, so it would have made sense to tell her above anyone else. So like, understandably, she has every right to be pissed because it's like she talked about, she thought she was a part of the crew. She thought she was part of the team, but now she feels like a little bit like of a laughing stock. Like, the fact is that you guys obviously don't trust me because you could have confided in me about any of this, but you never did. I mean, because even, you know, Dan's like, you're not part of the inner circle. You are the inner circle. You know, it's like they all care about her deeply, but it's just kind of like, she feels like second fiddle in all of this. Linda's not too happy about everyone reading the book and stuff like that. And she's like, okay, Great. Like, I normally go along with Lucifer's way of dealing with stuff therapeutically, but this is kind of bad because he's like, well, at least I can count on Chloe for being rational. And she's like, yeah. I was like, oh, like her expression, seems like she's reading something in that book she don't like. I thought like maybe her characterization wasn't what and it kind of plays into that, but it's not till she starts looking deeper into the book and starts realizing like her issues with Lucifer, and it kind of plays into what Aurora had brought up, like, right, on your deathbed, Lucifer wasn't there. And she starts realizing that there's moments where Lucifer has his major breakthroughs in therapy and he disappears for a multitude of reasons. And it's just like, when I need you, you're kind of not there. And so it plays, because she even brings it up to Lucifer. She's like, right, when Aurora said that initially, I was like, that's impossible. But now looking at this, it's like, right, like, when you become God, who's to say you won't pull off? He's like, my greatest disappearing act ever, you know? And it's like, that is kind of a sad thing of like, yeah, looking back on it, like when she looks at those moments, you're like, right, yes, there's context to it, but it's still a thing of he kind of left her high and dry. Like, yes, he was going through some stuff. Yes, he had went through some breakthroughs and stuff like that, but it still doesn't change the fact is he wasn't there for Chloe in some of those moments. Yes, they can be explained away. Yes, context matters, and she understands that, but it still doesn't make it any easier realizing like over the course of our journey, like how much is kind of like that happened over and over and over again. It just plays into like, you know, her worries about like, right, like who is to say like when you do become God that, you know, but for him it's like, I won't, you know, because I'll choose not to. But she's like, yeah, but like just like you chose your devil face or chose not to let your wings out right now, it's like you self-actualize. Like a lot of that is subconscious. So what if your subconscious decides to leave and you don't, you know? It's like because his subconscious and his conscious mind aren't of the two minds. Just because he actively wants something consciously, his subconscious, there's a deeper level to that. So it's very complex. And obviously Lucifer's reading through it and he kind of realizes like, wait a minute. And he confronts Linda. Where's the ending to this? It's like, wait, yeah, where is the ending? It's just back at the office. It's like, did you not bring it because at the end of the day, even you don't believe I can become God? I thought it was just because I was wondering, because the look on her face was kind of like, I knew there was something up with the ending, the reason why she wouldn't show them. And so, but obviously Lucifer and Chloe start talking because the thing is of like, right, like how much have I really changed? Because I kept saying all this stuff about how much I've grown and stuff like that. But have I ever really truly changed if I'm still kind of in this state right now? And she's like, all I said was because I was scared, or I am scared, you know? And, but it's like, look at how much you have grown over the course of the series and everything. And, because it kind of goes back to the whole like situation of him choosing to be vulnerable around her and everything, and just kind of playing into the element in that story of theirs. And so it definitely put things in a different perspective for Lucifer, even especially when Aurora rolls up and she's kind of like, because she was talking about the conversation about like Aurora's wings and everything, about them being weapons, like she failed in some way for Aurora's wings to be weapons. Which, I forgot what Lucifer was kind of saying in commentary to that. I'm blanking on what he said in that moment, but Aurora overheard their conversation, and she explains, like, her wings didn't become this, like, in spite of her, like, oh, you weren't there for me. They became this way because, like, my wings have always been like this. This is a gift you gave to me because you were the badass that you were. Like, you were always out there fighting for justice, and I wanted that. And so her wings are like the reason why because her wings are kind of like, right, like I want to be, you know, have a powerful weapon kind of for justice, like my mom. Like the wings are kind of like a manifestation, kind of representing like the kind of weapon that her mom is in the pursuit of justice, you know. And they're like, oh, that's really interesting. It's like it's one of like a million things you've given me, Mom. Him on the other hand, he's never given me anything. It's like, well, he's an angel, so he's the one that kind of gave you the wings. But it's like, why do you keep defending him? It's like, because I trust him. But she's like, why? I just don't understand why you trust him so much. I mean, he didn't even like fully realize how he felt about you and took a bullet from you. And he's like, you're 100% right. And he pulls out a gun and he hands it to her. Aurora, and he's like, go ahead, shoot me. He's like, no, it's what you wanted to do. It's like, right, and I'm gonna make myself vulnerable for you. That's the only way I'm gonna be. And Chloe's like, no, don't do this. And he's like, go ahead. And she shoots him, and at first she thinks like, oh, he's okay, but then he shows the blood, like, yeah, he got hurt. And it's like, in that moment, it's like, wait, you chose to be vulnerable about me. That means you do care. And then in that moment, she's like, you too, Chloe being like, you too, never do anything like that again. And then Linda shows up with the the ending to the book, but also just like Lucifer's like, yeah, see, I told you, I'm like this because I chose this because I do love you. And I'm like, oh, it's really sweet. It's the best way to kind of get that across, because that is something like, you know, because obviously that made Chloe question like everything with Lucifer when he stopped being vulnerable around her. That was a whole thing. So, but ultimately, the ending, I love it. The moment like it gets painted the way it is, I was like, how super masturbatory of you, Linda. It's kind of super narcissistic that at the end when Lucifer's ascending to heaven, it's you he's saying goodbye to, no one else. And then he flies up to heaven and he's like, oh, I'm on this throne now. It's all thanks to one, the greatest therapist, Dr. Linda Martin, and start listing off her initials, her medical initials and stuff like that. And it's like, really? She's like, at the end of the day, she's never been able to figure out how everything's going to play out, how this whole God thing was going to play out. She's like, I never saw it coming, so I just wrote an ending. But I love that it comes off a little narcissistic, but it's also because like she just, you know, because it's like, I mean, but that's the thing. Like, it wouldn't even just be Chloe; it'd be everyone, because everyone Lucifer has gotten close to over the course of this series has led to him becoming the person that he is. He's become a better person because of everyone. Like, everyone played a role in his progression and in his growth. So I thought that was pretty dope. But even Aurora kind of talks about the fact is that the book gave her a different perspective, and she gets some like Deck Star highlights about just everything that's going down, and I think it's so beautiful. Just kind of like moments between Lucifer and Chloe. It's like, once again, it's like the perfect, you know, final season, everything getting like flashbacks to all those moments they've had over the course of the season. Oh, it's so good. And like how much he's been there. It's like he loved you or loves you, you know, back essentially. So it's not just a one-way street, because for her, she grew up hearing her mom tell these stories over and over again of how much she loved Lucifer, but now realizing like, oh, like it wasn't just a one-way street. Like Dad just loved you just as much back, still loves you just as much back, you know? So I thought that was a powerful thing. And obviously Linda's kind of well, because at the end of the day, Lucifer, you know, summons his wings again, because Linda's like, right, you were vulnerable around Aurora. That's because your subconscious and your unconscious mind, your conscious and your subconscious mind are now like together, like they're in concert, they're in sync. So it's no longer like, oh, your subconscious doing something your conscious mind doesn't want. It's like it's all in sync now. So it's like, right, you're ready to be God. But he goes, I choose not to be. Because he's like, because him and Chloe had the conversation about her saying that she wants to stay here on Earth and do her job. And he's like, how could I ever like be angry at you for being who you are? It's like, you're my detective. It's like, it's what you do. You know, how can I blame you for that? But then, you know, Lucifer realized like all that he's gained being here on Earth. It's made him realize like, right, I've never wanted to be God. I don't know what I want, but I do know that being God isn't it. He's like, I hope that's not disappointing. She's like, why would I ever be disappointing in you being who you are, you know? But it still doesn't change the whole, yeah, the apocalypse is still happening. It's like, oh, thanks, Buzzkill Doctor. But they go back to Linda's place, because Linda's kind of being like, right, I wrote this whole book about predicating like, oh, I've got it all figured out. But even I didn't even realize that you didn't want to become God. So like, I'm a failure. But then he's like, I wouldn't be where I am right now if it wasn't for you. I mean, you've literally helped me fix relationships that were broken for millennia. That's things between him and Amenadal, like him and his mom and his dad. Like, you helped fix those relationships. Like, you have been there with me every step of the way. You have made me a better man at the end of the day. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. And it's just like I said, it all encompasses and comes together in this moment of just like, this beautiful, like I said, it is like probably like the final therapy session, and it all culminates in this, like that, you know, like this is truly the last bit of therapy. Linda, you've helped me grow so much, and like look where I am now, like, you know. Kyle, I didn't talk about it, but I do appreciate like the title of this episode, Save the Devil, Save the World. Like, I'm always down for Heroes reference, save the cheerleader, save the world. But it isn't just Lucifer that made some progress. So did Dan, because Maze ended up about to leave to go back to Eve, but then, you know, because Dan has nowhere else to go. But then Maze is like, deep down, like, you saw your hell loop enough to know, like, deep down, that feeling you have, that guilt that you're running away from, it's there. So are you going to run away from it for like 1,000 years like a weak human, or are you going to stand up and face it like a demon? And he remembers the hell loop was back when he died. And we're not 100% sure what it is, but whatever that guilt is, he figured it out. And he's like, I know what I need to do. like I said, my thought was it has to be tied to Trixie and his death. Like, right, he feels guilty of not being there for her. I think guilty for what he put the people he cares about, Trixie in particular, what he put them through. Maybe that's what the guilt's about. We'll have to wait to see where things kind of go on that front. But we also have, like, Ella. She's, like, making things okay with Carol, because it's like, right, you know how sometimes, like, you're with a friend and it's kind of like the end of the world type of thing. It's like, right, she's like, well, I've got 5 of those. Well, actually 6, you know? And she's like, I'm sorry, like, I wish I could tell you what's going on, but I can't. But he's like, no, I understand, like, whatever it is, like, I don't need to know all the details and stuff like that. But, like, you know, he was very understanding. I was almost scared. I was like, oh, please don't let there be, like, some twist about Carol right now. Like, don't pull a Pete. Which I'm surprised we haven't gotten anything with that. But I'm curious, is there still room for that? Probably not. I think that'd probably be a lot to throw on Ella's plate at the end. But I was wondering, I figured we'd have, like, I was thinking it'd be interesting if that ended up being a confrontation in this, is Ella and Pete. But no. I guess, like, the first half of season 5, they had that confrontation to a certain extent, so I guess that was kind of the nail in the coffin for that. Because obviously Ella's kind of continued her growth past all that, like, right, accepting my darkness and stuff. But Carol said something that I think is going to be really impactful for Ella, and that is, like, right, you don't need to know every single detail about someone. All you need to know is their heart. And I think Ella's going to take that in consideration. It's like, right, you guys might not have told me everything. I was thinking, like, it changed, like, everything between us, but regardless of me not knowing the finer details, I still know who you guys are at heart. Like, you guys are still my friends, and we still have the connections we have, even though I was kind of oblivious to, like, some of the celestial stuff going on around me. We didn't get that this episode, but I do think that is something we can see coming, like, soon. But that's definitely going to be interesting. But obviously, at the very end, we have Aminadel returning, being like, right, I know why the world is ending. And it's like, oh, bollocks, because Aminadel's like, we got to talk. Once again, I don't think it's, like, because my theory I want to say it was last episode, but before this was either it's going to be like, oh, it's supposed to seem like it's Lucifer not being on the throne, throwing everything to chaos. But there's also the possibility of, what if it's, and I think this is going to be it. I don't think it's the throne thing. I think it is legitimately Aurora being here. She broke through the space-time continuum. Like, she probably punched a hole in the space-time continuum, and it's slowly been rippling out throughout space-time, growing and growing. And that's where the apocalypse is. Her coming here inadvertently is going to help her heal, but it's also, like, making everything worse, because it's probably a paradox situation, because Chloe might already be pregnant, and with 2 versions of that same person, even though ages apart, it's probably creating a paradox, which is doing all of this. So I think that's where direction we're heading. We'll have to wait and see where the next episode takes us. It's the freaking penultimate episode of Lucifer Forever, you know? So that's going to be wild, which is weird to say, because obviously there is the Sandman show, but obviously it's a different version of Lucifer and stuff like that, but still. It's going to be so interesting to see what the penultimate episode has in store for us. Only 2 episodes left, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so excited to see how this all plays out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.